Hey everybody, welcome back to BobkeTV. And first off, let me apologize for a long interval between videos. Has been a good off season for me so far. But I thought I would take this occasion to get back into BobkeTV and endeavor to provide everybody with more regular content. And let's face it, the sport of cycling always provides plenty of commentating worthy headlines all year round. So I'm going to try to get back to it more consistently from this point forward. 2018 is going to be a great year, but 2017 is finishing off on a very disturbing note. And I think you know what I'm talking about. News coming to us from Chris Froome and Team Sky in last year's Vuelta, or the 2017 Vuelta, still this year, that Chris Froome, and first of all, it's very complicated, very nuanced, a lot of gray area, enough gray area to paint a battleship. But we'll try to at least outline what we know so far, the facts as we know them so far, what I think is going to happen, what I think the UCI will do, and what I would do. Some of the disturbing things about this latest happenstance, and a couple of silver linings. But first off, what we know, Chris Froome on September 7th, on a tough stage in the Vuelta, had twice the allowed amount of salbutamol in his system. Salbutamol, a asthma medication that Chris Froome has stated he takes regularly to treat his asthma. Which I think is probably legitimate. He claims that the salbutamol he took when he had twice the allowed amount was because of an inhaler he uses on a regular basis, training and racing, to do his job. Salbutamol can also be delivered intravenously through pills and with a nebulizer, if I'm not mistaken. And according to the UCI rules, you are allowed a certain amount of salbutamol, and I don't think you even need a TUE, therapeutic use exemption, to go up to the allowed limit. Anything over that, then it's a doping violation, regardless if you have a TUE for asthma medication or not. And Chris had twice the allowed amount, which to get that, apparently, I'm not a pharmacologist. I'm not a doping expert, not a doctor, obviously, although I do play one on TV. Old joke, sorry. Very difficult to get the concentration in his urine with inhaler alone. So that is one of the disturbing parts of this case. When you have an excess of salbutamol in your system, there's two options for the UCI, and it depends on the discussions and proof that you can provide with them to figure out how that happened, how you had more than the allowed amount. And if you're found to have done that purposefully, through recklessness, deliberately, 2 years, and you forfeit your results is the penalty under the rules. If the UCI decides through what you can demonstrate to them, you were negligent, that you inadvertently took too much salbutamol, then the UCI can reduce the prescribed ban. Through the rules, what is required in the suspension, which is 2 years. So if they decide you were negligent, that you did not do it deliberately, then you can be eligible, not necessarily get, but be eligible for a reduced ban. We saw that with Diego Ulissi recently. He got 9 months for having too much salbutamol at the Giro d'Italia. And this is important. He did not forfeit his 2 stage wins in the Giro from that year that he was positive that he had too much salbutamol. And his 2 years was reduced to 9 months, like I said. And that might be critical in the Chris Froome case. And I do think it will have some bearing on what they do to Chris Froome. Before that, Alessandro Petacchi, a very high profile, extra salbutamol. 1 year, and forfeiture of his results from the race that he was found to have too much salbutamol. So it's a medicine that apparently quite a few pros take. Because there's an epidemic of asthma amongst endurance athletes. That's another question. We'll get into that perhaps in a different video. But for the time being, twice the amount of salbutamol, which Chris does not deny. And now the onus is on Froome and Team Sky to prove that it was negligence and it wasn't deliberate. And in order to do that, what Diego Ulissi had to do, he had to go to the UCI headquarters and undergo a battery of tests to see how he metabolizes salbutamol. And the concentration in his urine was not nearly as significant as Chris Froome's, and he was still given a 9-month ban. But he did keep his results, so that might factor into the way the UCI adjudicates Chris Froome's case, and time will tell. And one of the disturbing things, this happened September 7th, and we're just finding out about it now, 3 months later. Another disturbing thing, Dave Brailsford weighed in, who's the last guy you want to have weighing in, who's overseen a number of very questionable practices on Team Sky. And if I was Team Sky, I would have him no longer weigh in on it and just say the team is looking into it. The UCI is going to decide to leave it at that. I will paraphrase Dave Brailsford's quote, and I recommend everybody look this up. This is what Brailsford said: blah blah blah, blah blah blah, science, blah, hydration, concentration, blah 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 blah, blah 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 blah. So please, let's hope that Brailsford does not weigh in. I recommended he be asked to remove himself many months ago, or be let go from Team Sky, and this is going to continue to happen as long as Team Sky runs the program the way they do. And we've had a long litany of very, very dodgy, questionable, going way back with Brailsford and Team Sky and British cycling. And to be honest, it's getting a little bit tedious. It's a very disappointing headline to read, and another dark cloud over the sport, brought to us courtesy of Team Sky and the brain trust there in Dave Brailsford. 3 months interval between the infraction and when we're finding out about it. And another disturbing thing about this, the UCI did not announce this. Team Sky did not announce this. Chris Froome, Dave Brailsford did not announce this. A newspaper from England got leaked documentation. And then the UCI, Chris Froome, Team Sky, the Vuelta had to swing into action and start doing damage control. And that is just absolutely pitiful. It's so discouraging that another doping scandal has been leaked to the press, and the governing bodies and the principals have not announced it. So it makes you worry that they've been trying to figure out a way to make this go away behind closed doors ever since it saw the light of day on September the 7th, when the infraction occurred in the Vuelta. Chris Froome, after the Vuelta, did lots of racing, including the World Championships, where he got third in the individual elite men's time trial, and the Team Sky with Chris Froome got third in the team time trial. And there's a number of other disturbing parts of this case, and we'll just have to see in time. And this is not going to go away anytime soon, folks. So what I think is going to happen, I think that the UCI will give Chris Froome a 6-month ban. He will lose his results from the Worlds, but keep his Vuelta title. And that, I think, would send the wrong message. I think a 6-month ban is appropriate, but he also needs to lose his results from the Worlds and from the Vuelta. He needs to have his Vuelta title taken away. Which leads me to one of the silver linings. That would be Vincenzo Nibali. And he said, and it's not a direct quote, but he said, in essence, how can I believe in the emotions I felt on the podium in Madrid? How am I supposed to believe that the results are legitimate as I understood them to be standing on the second step of the podium in Madrid? And don't oftentimes, and this is one of the things that's disturbing about professional cycling or any other professional sport. When you are presumably competing clean against a person that is in violation of the anti-doping rules, and you are racing clean against that person, and they are basically taking your results away from you by cheating. Not that this is what's going on with Chris Froome, but at least Nibali has the intestinal fortitude to come forward and say, as you would do if you were racing clean, how dispiriting it is to have somebody that beats you be found to be cheating with drugs. And that's no matter how it got in Chris Froome's system. And this is another part that's disturbing. As Brailsford and Froome try to backpedal furiously, how is it that the team that has zero tolerance, that is maybe the most detail-oriented of all teams, can somehow have Chris Froome have twice the amount of medicine, of a pharmacological product in his system that's banned over a certain amount? How can he have twice the amount that's allowed? So hats off to Vincenzo Nibali for having the courage to step forward and ask some critical questions of Sky and Chris Froome. Tony Martin's come forward recently to say it's another dark cloud over cycling. He can't understand for the life of him, and I can't either. I have to agree with Tony 100% on this. How is it that some athletes with the same infractions are treated very differently from some of the big star athletes? Why is that? Why is there this multiple standards, depending on how good you are as a bike racer, depending on what your results are, multiple standards of judgment and penalties for all the riders in the peloton? And Tony Martin, who's done an incredible amount to assure the people, the fans of bike racing in his home country of Germany, along with Marcel Kittel and John Degenkolb, that our sport has turned a page, that what you're seeing is an authentic, natural representation of the talent of the athletes and the beauty of the sport. And German TV abandoned the Tour de France. And because Kittel, Degenkolb, Tony Martin, amongst others, have been so diligent in doing the right thing as to the best of their abilities, although German TV had a point there, abandoning the tour with some of the previous generation riders. So a lot at stake for everybody in cycling. And Tony Martin illuminating that a little bit, and just another unnecessary disaster for cycling. The headlines are all too predictable. And I would imagine I'm all in. Bike racing is a sport I love. Bike racing and the Tour de France especially, and the Grand Tours and the Classics and all the stage races. That's what I live for. I love it. Amongst a few other things, which we won't get into. But Tony Martin brings up a very good point: is, are we really going through another one of these controversies? And is it being perpetrated by a team that should know better, Team Sky? And I find it very hard to believe that Chris Froome and Team Sky and the medical staff don't know how many puffs is within the allowed amount of salbutamol, if that's exactly what's going on. It might come out that that is not the entirety, that's not an adequate explanation for twice the amount allowed. So, very complicated case. Don't want to be broaching these subjects here, and we'll see what happens. 6 months, the sanction I think is going to be handed out, and what I recommend one of them anyways, will give Chris a chance to do the Giro, the Tour, and the Vuelta next year, if he so chooses. But this is going to be another morass that Team Sky is dragging us through, and completely unnecessary and very discouraging, but plenty more on this story to come. And I want to thank everybody for your patience in the long, interminable interval between videos, and I'll try to keep them coming much more frequently. Tour de France, by the way, probably be my next video unless something earth-shaking happens with the Froome case moving forward in the near future. Tour de France 2018, I'll just say this, a little teaser, greatest Tour de France route I've ever seen in my life. Okay, everybody, let me know what you think. Was twice Froome Salbutamol negligence, or was it deliberate, reckless, and did Froome just keep puffing till he felt better, no matter what the rules were? That's possible also. Time will tell. But weigh in the comment section. Keep the language clean. And thank you so much for your patience. All right, everybody. Until next time. Adios.